Good evening and welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. It's Wednesday Night Live. We are just a couple days away from the Michigan game. Could not be more excited. And we're going to talk about a few different things about that game that we are keeping our eye on. But first, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 10,000 subscribers. We are almost there. But if you're watching right now, make sure you like the video. Helps us out, helps us a ton as we try to bring more and more great stuff on a daily basis. If you haven't been to Inside Texas, sign up and use the promo code HOOK'em. That gives you 50% off an annual membership. Don't miss this opportunity. Got Justin Wells, got James Hayden, got Drew Kelson here. And one of the things, Drew, that Justin brought up before we went on the show is that Texas and Michigan have only played one time, and you were involved with one of those wins on the roster of Pasadena on January 1st, 2005, I believe, or maybe it was January 2nd, oddly enough. But you were involved in one of the top uniform games that I think anybody can remember, maybe ever, as Justin's mentioning. Just what were some of your memories of that game between Vince running and Dusty's kick?
Oh, man. That was my first bowl game. So I was a freshman. I was excited to just be a part of that because 3 out of 4 of my bowl games were in California, 2 Rose Bowls. But I felt like the hype of going to that game and leading up to that game, it was subtle, but it was still real. Michigan had a really, really good team that year.
Yes.
They had a really good team, really good defense that year. So it just wasn't a helmet game. I mean, those are 2 legendary helmets, but the game itself and leading up to that game was really exciting. I mean, that was when Aaron Rodgers got all pissed off because Mac got us into the Rose Bowl, right? So there was a bit of just everything leading up to that game was exciting, but they had a really good roster. I remember Braylon Edwards and Steve Breston.
Edwards, Steve Breston, Leon Hall, the whole D-line. David Boss is a starting NFL center, all-pro for years. All 5 starting offensive linemen went to the NFL. Steve Breston went for 315 in total yards. Philip Giger let Braylon Edwards get behind him. Oh, great game.
No, man. Actually, PGZ and I think we had the same birthday. That's random. But no, dude, it's just that game. I think that was the first time we had been in this bubble. To be honest with you, we had been in this bubble. We had been in the Big 12. We kind of knew what that was about. Even our bowl games were predictable. This was the first time, even though it wasn't a national championship game, we stepped outside of our comfort zone, went to California, went somewhere we didn't have any business stepping into, and played a team we never would have seen otherwise. And Michigan got to be a part of that. And I think we've just kind of grown and leaned into that year after year after year as we've had these other battles. And so this year, playing against Michigan, especially in the format and the way that the landscape works now, this is exciting. It's another big helmet game. I actually have a football back here with the helmets, both helmets on it. That's commemorative. But there's nothing like this matchup. And, we got a big game on our hands.
Chad Henne, freshman. Mike Hart, freshman. Like, this was such a good team. That defense was so good, man. Man, it was such a good game. I'm just reminiscing, because I've seen it up and down my timeline for the last few days, being on that 20-yard line, sitting in Larry Applewhite's seats and just watching that ball. Let me tell you something. When Mangum kicked that ball, I did not think it was going through the uprights, and it looked like they had tipped it. But, man, once it went through, man, I got to tell you. And then they asked Vince the biggest question, what's next? We'll be back. Man, I'm ready for Saturday, gentlemen.
So, Drew, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about, and getting right to it with Chris Morris, we talk a lot about Sharon Moore and the Michigan offense being kind of bully ball and kind of brutish, and that's whether Alex Orgy's back there or whether Davis Warren's back there. But in reality, Sharon Moore is very creative. So this kind of feeds into Chris Morris' question. What 5 do you put out there in the 5-2-4 defense against Michigan? It's a 3-4, but I see what you mean. It would be Baron Sorrell at 1 he'd be Buck in this. You would have Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins as your ends. Bill Norton as your tackle, David Benda and Anthony Hill as off ball, and then Trey Moore as your Sam. So it's a 3-4. It looks like the old school 3-4. But Drew, what I'm curious about is that everybody thinks it's kind of brute-ish bully ball, but he is very creative. And the way that Michigan is creative, no matter who's at quarterback, is in how many gaps they force a team to defend. So if you're, obviously you played a little linebacker, you played safety. A lot of these linebackers are trying to make sure, okay, do I go to this one or this one? Am I in the B or in the C? But Michigan can do some things with some big old boys coming through where if you're a linebacker or maybe even if you're a line defender, you may have to be responsible for 3 gaps. And that seems like it's a big challenge for any defense, let alone the Longhorns this weekend.
Yeah, there are rules within every defense. And so the random thing about us, at least coming into this season, we don't know how they're going to account for what defense we're going to deploy. And so while that, regardless of that, if they plan to do what they typically do, it does go beyond just, hey, big offensive linemen mauling on the defensive line. It really is more schematic. It is technical. You have to have proper leverage. And your linebackers have to have sound reads. The difference this year with Michigan is that they don't have that cohesiveness across the offensive line yet. They have not created that yet. So while schematically he can put them in position for success, they have to all collectively execute on that. And you need their running back with the ability to be patient and identify those gaps and those holes. Because, that's what they've had in the past. We still don't know if all of those pieces are going to fit together yet with this particular team, with this particular roster, because you cannot understate how cohesive that team was last year. And anyone just pretending a scheme in and of itself is enough, they're just wrong on that. But if they pretend that it's just, hey, you need these big mauling offensive linemen that's not it either. It really does come down to the both have to be in sync. And this is the first time we'll see them in a while where they just don't have both working hand in hand.
And even at the end of that year, I think they got one guy who suffered an ACL late. That other guy who stepped right in was ready to go and fit in with that. And, all those guys on that team, whether it was JJ, Corum, any of the tight ends, they all came back. Like there was a lot of continuity on that team. James, I know Justin watched a little bit of the Fresno State and Michigan game. Did you get much of a look at it? And, aside from it taking a 17-point fourth quarter for the Wolverines to really pull away, what were some things that you noticed from Michigan's season opener? Mute button? Oh, did we lose him?
I did watch a lot of that game, so I was muted for a second there.
We got you, James. We're here for you, buddy. If I do this, go to that mute button, Daddy.
Second time, guys. I'm learning the ropes. But, I did watch that game a lot because I was just sort of like everyone. Like we were talking about, Michigan had such continuity. Almost identical core for the most part from 21 through 23. So I wanted to see like how Davis Warren was going to look. Last minute he was the starter. I think like a lot of people, I was unimpressed. Fresno State as a non-Power 5 team, the people know that historically they give, a tough fight up to a lot of these higher level schools. Year in and year out, but I expected Michigan to be able to run on them a lot better. I was shocked at how little they even tried to, let Orji throw the ball around. And when he came in, it's almost same as years past. He's just coming in to run a wildcat ostensibly. And then, of course, I think the big story was Donovan Edwards not being able to get going. And the wide receiver room is, it was never, they didn't exactly have like crazy weapons over the years, but they had guys like Roman Wilson who could make plays. They could throw when they needed to.
Yeah.
I feel like this year's team, they can't throw when they need to. I feel like they've kind of been Iowa-fied a little bit this offseason. So that's what I saw watching. Great defensive play, slugfest, but I was shocked mostly by the running game and that they still don't really know what's going on at quarterback and they don't have any other weapons other than Loveland. So that was kind of the notes I took away from it.
Justin, what were your takeaways?
Man, James nailed it. That's why we brought him on. That guy, good eye, brother. I felt like Davis Warren threw off his back foot and almost every time he went back. Like he was going backwards constantly. And I was a little surprised how Fresno State was able to get that much pressure on him with Michigan's O-line. Even with them losing all those guys, they've still developed. That's a system that develops those guys from the inside out, not so much the portal, where they had to go for the secondary in the offseason. And so I was a little surprised, but, maybe it was Warren's jitters a little bit. Orji, you know what you get. And I think they're going to have a package of plays where he's going to try to throw the ball to try to throw off Texas defense. Loveland is the tight end is their best guy. That's their guy. I used him in college football 25 the other day. That's their dude. The other guys, that tight end is for real. He's going to play on Sundays for a while. And so he's legit. But I feel like if Texas can get pressure, look, Fresno, I think, actually played really well. I think we got to tip our cap. I think they had a really good game plan that pretty much hampered Michigan for 3 quarters. And I almost feel like Michigan is definitely going to be better Saturday. Like, if they would have blown out Fresno State, they don't learn anything about themselves. And Texas and Michigan going into this almost deadlocked. But that wasn't the case. So now I think you're going to see them back. I think they'll be better. I think maybe they overlooked Fresno a little bit. Maybe Sharon Moore didn't cry enough in the pregame speech. Either way, I think this team is going to be better on Saturday. I think we saw the bad Michigan. You kind of hoped they would blow out Fresno and you'd see that this Saturday, but I think they're going to correct their mistakes. They still have a lot of talent there. It's going to take a fist fight. But the best part is I think Texas is prepared for just that.
Got to give some love. Thank you, Brett Nelson, for the super chat. No Quinn turnovers, Texas 27-16. And that kind of ties into a comment I saw. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was from Archtorn. There we go. I'm aware of using one game to conclude that the Michigan quarterbacks are inept. Here's the thing. Like, basically from January 17th of this year on, we were all expecting Orji. And all of a sudden, until basically game day, Orji didn't win the job. That's somebody who's been in the system. He has his limitations, without a doubt, but he's a great athlete. He's someone that they trusted with the ball in his hands at some points last year. But, I think this is I don't know if there was a winner. I mean, this battle may still kind of be ongoing. In previous years, when they did the Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy dance, like they had Hawaii and I think another scrub team and then one more to warm themselves up with. Alex Orji did not win this job, and they gave him a lot of opportunities to, especially when looking at who they played, how they played it, and Davis Warren was the guy they ended up going with. Make sure you get your questions in. We're going to get to a lot of them, but before we keep on going, got to give some love to our sponsor, and that is Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Thank you, LC. Thank you to Chris Morris. I see the super chat, and I think this is your question.
He answered his question earlier, and I think he was just being generous.
Well, hey, he's got another one, so I'm going to go ahead and give him this one. Would you put Jelani McDonald on the tight end one-on-one? He has the size and the speed.
Which one?
I would be there's no good matchup here. That's the thing. When you think about how Jatavian Sanders was a problem for defenses, a little bit different, but still, when you have that type of size, that type of speed, you are faster than a lot of linebackers, and you're bigger than a lot of defensive backs. Jelani, I think, is about 6'2", 200. But, I don't know what his, coverage fundamentals are like. So that's kind of all to say. This is a tough matchup, don't you think, James? You button.
Colston Loveland. Sorry, guys. It's still living at home, so I'm trying to keep it muted with my brothers around and everything. But yes, with Colston Loveland, I mean, he's the main problem. And tight ends, the reason they're so effective and can be such a bailout for an offense is like when you get a good one who's a great route runner, your average, outside linebacker's not going to be able to cover him well. Corners are too small for him. But I do think Texas has a lot of athletes like McDonald, people that we can roll in and throw bodies at him. I don't know if he'll necessarily be covering him, but I think because they are going to be one-dimensional in the pass game and they struggled, to break 150 yards this Saturday, I think outside of Loveland, we should be all right for the most part. And I think it's one of those things where if we just hone in on him and we're going to be stacking the box, what y'all were talking about earlier with that old school 3-4 look we may see. I think that other than him, if you just let him get a few catches here and there, we should be all right. Pass defense, I think we know nothing's getting over the top of Makuba and Taff as we saw on Saturday. So I like our ability to cover Loveland. I think they're kind of a one-trick pony. No other receiver had more than 20 yards on Saturday. So I honestly, I'm not as worried about him. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but right now I think we'll do all right in covering him if we just hone in on him.
Justin, I got a good one for you from Joe Smith. How ready is Sadir Mitchell? How ready would Sadir Mitchell be for 10 to 15 snaps on Saturday? He's built for this. I mean, I think Bill Norton's built for this, and I think that's why they brought him in. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, we're going to see some doses of Bill Norton. This is where Wild Bill really – one of the reasons he was brought in was probably for this game. And so Bill Norton's going to be an X factor. But Sadir Mitchell's from up there, up on the East Coast. He's from that region. New Jersey, Michigan. There's water between them. I think that's kind of where he's going with it. And if it's going to be 55 degrees, everyone knows that's a defensive lineman's dream. If you ever notice in the early September games, D linemen don't flash that much. It's 100 degrees. They are tired after the third snap. But you get into October, November of the high school playoffs, and these D linemen are starting to play outstanding. It's because the temperature got colder outside. They're better. They're a little more equipped for that. If Sadir Mitchell gets 10 or 15 snaps, Texas played good on Saturday. They played real well. And so I think he's built for it from a weather standpoint, from an East Coast standpoint. But there's some other big boys ahead of him right now. I'd love to see Sadir flash a little bit and get in that rotation. But, this is a game for Wild Bill Norton and some of those portal guys.
This from Victor Santiago. Should we be concerned about the weather? It's supposed to be upper 50s with 29-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Hey, if it's 30, I'm looking at the handy dandy weather app. High of 60, low of 46. Football weather. That won't cause any problems. 29-mile-an-hour gusts. I mean, that would cause anybody some problems. That's pretty strong. Nobody's got arm strength for that. But I think Texas has a lot of side-to-side passing, and Sark is able to scheme up horizontal just as well as he's able to scheme up vertical. That if there's a 30-mile-an-hour gust or something like that, they'll be able to overcome it. Now, it takes away one of the things he loves in those deep shots, which is one of the things that we didn't see a ton of against Colorado State. But I'm really curious to see. I'm excited for nice weather, but 30-mile-an-hour winds, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Chris Bennett, is Michigan ready for the speed Texas has? Drew, I think there's one cornerback that is, but I don't know about the rest of that secondary.
I'm not going to doubt these guys until I actually see them play. I mean, we know there's one who we know is, and I mean the other guy, who's the other corner the other day? I mean, he got a pick off the tip ball. He had him he was in good position on coverage. I mean, at the end of the day, speed helps depending on how we want to deploy our speed. And so, I mean, even tying into 29-mile-an-hour wind gusts, I'm not sure what we'll be able to do as far as deploying that, whether it be across the middle, on the seams, or posts. But at the end of the day, I think our speed is too much for really anybody. It doesn't matter who the corner or the safeties. This team should have speed that is going to give any set of corners trouble, no matter who they are. So the goal is to hunt matchups, is to find those matchups where our speed can take advantage of any of their guys, regardless of who they are. Just got to make sure we have the right matchups and attack those guys in space. But yeah, there's no team that should have the speed to address what we can, how we can threaten just play after play.
Drew, another good one. This one from our buddy Texas Homer. What's the difference in motivation between playing a tune-up game and playing a top program, considering it's something Texas has done in recent years and something you did in your career?
Honestly, the way that I think we all grew up playing this sport, you felt like you had to be different about it. Like, so, oh, you got up for certain games. You really treated the opponent differently. I think the sport is changing, and at least the psychology of this team, for sure, it doesn't treat it any differently. Everyone's competing for snaps. Your motivation is, how many snaps can I get this week? Every day in practice, you're competing for more snaps. So I just think the way we're structured as a team, yes, I mean, you haven't played football and hit anybody new in weeks. So week one, regardless of who it is, you're ready to go out and get after it. But yeah, week two, yes, are you going to soak in the crowd a bit more? Are you going to soak in the lights and understand, like really take in the environment you're are you going to feel more connected to your teammates because you're on the road? So there's a lot of different elements there, but at the end of the day, you got to take it one day at a time. Motivation is going to be tested every day in practice because everybody at every position right now, they're all battling for reps. Look out for Cole Hudson. Look out for some of these guys who put in work every day.
Justin, based off team sources that you've talked to, we never get the sense, and I think the sense that we do get is fans get pumped up, but they try as hard as they can to get these 100 or so players treating every game to be important. It's not an easy task. That's why Sark's paid $10 million a year to do it. But that's why it seems like Texas, for the most part, treats or says they do, tries to live up to their word of treating every opponent the same.
Yeah, good timing. Talked to a team source earlier today, and so the first thing he said was, it is very businesslike in the facility since Sunday morning. It's almost like everyone has this collective confidence that they understand, you want to have fun, you want to get after it, but this is a little different. You got to really focus in on this one. Anytime I think you play the national champions, you get 18 to 22-year-olds attention, maybe a little bit more. But this group, it already feels like they're really honed in right now. And so, I think that's part of it also, but I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I think they want to treat this. There's 40 guys that came back from that group last year or more, and they want to treat this the same way they did last year. They want to approach each game because now they have that confidence. And I think that's the biggest factor for these guys is knowing, look, this is the national champion. You schedule these type games for a reason. Nobody talks about bringing Rice on a home and home. Nobody discusses UTSA on a home and home. 5 years in advance, you know about Michigan coming. You know where you're going when you go to Columbus, Ohio. Like, it's a big deal. And so within the program, it sounds like the offense is going to rip the lid off a little bit. Apparently, we're going to see a little bit more, which, I mean, that's not breaking news to anybody, but that's what's going on in the facility right now. And I think Drew hit it on the head. These guys are all clamoring for like an extra target, an extra rep, an extra opportunity, because after last week's, 11 different guys catch the football, I don't think you're going to see that type of balance against Michigan. And so each guy wants to make their mark because they know everyone in America at 11 a.m. is watching this game.
James, going to keep on going. Are you a Prize Picks guy by chance?
A lot of my buddies are. One of them actually won about $3,500 on TCU over Michigan a couple years back.
Wow.
And then he lost it all running with TCU against Georgia. So I haven't dabbled yet, but a lot of my friends love Prize Picks.
So I just put one together. It is NFL weekend, so this is a great time to get into it, but it's also got college. Here are mine. I'm thinking points aplenty here. Quinn Ewers over 246 passing yards. Shadur Sanders over 315 passing yards. Nico Iamaleava over 253. And Dylan
like
Raiola
Nico.
over 234.
So you just think it's going to be an air show on Saturday?
I'm ready for some passing, and if you're ready for some passing too, you got to go check out Prize Picks. This is where I'm testing my skills, and you can turn $10 into $1,000 like James Friends with just a few presses of a button. It's a great time to get involved for NFL with fantasy coming back. If you've got a guy on your fantasy team and you're a real believer, then you need to go to Prize Picks. Go to Inside Texas or go to Prize Picks in the app or go to their website. Use the code Inside Texas. You'll receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. It is daily fantasy sports made easy, and I'm all in on these quarterbacks. So hopefully, I'm a Nico believer. I'm kind of a Dylan believer, and I think Shadur has to carry his team. So go to Prize Picks, promo code Inside Texas, and see if I am.
What'd you have on Gabriel? I didn't hear that one.
I didn't have one on Gabriel.
Oh, okay, I thought you
I had a season long one. So I think I had him on the over. I picked him to win the Heisman, as silly as that may sound. And that didn't look that good against Idaho the other night.
Good.
The Vandals are rough though. Vandals, that's a tough out.
So that'll be that'll be an interesting one. So one of the things that the chat is pretty all in on, and it's these two things from Lou Dog, and it's also from Working Man. It's going to be a game won by who wins in the trenches. And James, we had Texas had a guy this week win SEC co-offensive lineman of the week in his second career start, and that was Cam Williams. We feel like we've got a good sense of Kelvin Banks, Jake Majors, and his false starts. DJ Campbell. And even Hayden Conner and Cole Hudson got some run with the first teams. But how impressive was it for Texas to be able to see Cameron Williams, despite Gabe Icard's protestations, have one of the better weeks on the offensive line in the conference?
Yeah, I mean, that was good to see Cam Williams because I think it was kind of a testament to what was going on all around the country this weekend as you're seeing guys who stayed. And Cam Williams just got a second career start, I believe, in his third or fourth year in the program. And having a great week. That was awesome to see. I know some people were complaining about Hayden Conner, but I think overall the O-line had a positive game on Saturday, and they're talking about, winning in the trenches this weekend, which obviously we're stepping up in competition. This D-line is still that they have that core there with Mason Graham. So that will be hard. But again, I mean, Texas has a top 5 O-line in the country this year. I think everybody kind of projected it with guys like Banks coming in. So we're expected to be able to, push guys around even in these big games. And we saw them do it last year on the road at Alabama, being able to run it down their throat on that last drive. So I think it'll definitely be harder this week for the offensive line, but I expect a great performance. I mean, with those winds and those conditions, we probably will be run heavy. So expect Gibson and Blue to have, some bigger days, more touches. But I like the O-line. I think Cam Williams is going to be a household name for Texas fans by the end of this season.
And Justin, one of the things is we can talk about Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. I think every discussion about the Michigan defense kind of starts and ends with them. But you can't forget some of the other guys like Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore. It's not two guys on that defensive line. It is like their entire defensive line. And I'm curious if this is one of those games where you really focus in on what Cam Williams is able to do. I mean, maybe he gets some opportunities based on how they block, trying to get those guys caught up in the wash. But it's not like it's just the defensive tackles when you think about this defensive line. It's those edges in Stewart and in Moore. And with Wink Martindale, he's going to be sending those guys flying all over the place.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about who Cam Williams lines up across from. That's going to be a strong matchup no matter what. I'm worried about who's blitzing on his side. I'm worried about who's trying to get low and trying to get arc and trying to get to the quarterback. This might be the premier matchup. Texas O-line against Michigan defense, the ultimate great on great. And to me, I think that's going to be fantastic to see that because I think it's going to go both ways. I think Michigan will make a push. I think Texas will do what they do. It's going to be who lasts, who makes the biggest plays, further into the game. And so You gotta talk about that entire defense. I think they worked on a great yo-yo system last year. And when you got Wink Martindale, if he's not calling Price is Right and Wheel of Fortune, he's sending blitzes on a regular basis, fanatically. And I got to tell you what, if Will Johnson's going to focus on Isaiah Bond, and I had heard a little bit that could be the case, you got 5 other guys that are going to be dancing with guys that may not be capable of matching up with those others. This is where you see a Jonte Cook burst, a Ryan Wingo, a DeAndre Moore, because they might focus that on Bond, or they may shift some of that to Matthew Golden. Yeah, Will Johnson's going to get his. He's that good. But at the end of the day, the premier matchup is Texas O-line and Michigan's D-line. And I'm more worried about Cam with blitzing and like little guys trying to get past him than I am him firing off against the guy across from him.
Drew, I think this guy, Detroit versus everybody in that picture. So, Les, if you're watching from a place where there's a lot of Michigan faithful, thank you for coming and checking us out. If Michigan stops the Texas passing game, the game is over. That's hard to quibble with just because we know we're talking about Graham and Grant. But we saw Texas run against Alabama last year. We saw Texas run against a lot of different teams last year. And the thing is, we may get a game where Quinn Ewers, despite all the progress, loses his mind. I don't think the game is 100% over just because, like we said, the Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood are creative in the run game, just like Sharon Moore. So I'm curious if you're what do you think about our Wolverine buddies' estimation here?
Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Michigan has every reason to have confidence in their defense. They should feel this way about the defense. They just won a national championship with a stout defense, taking down a team that we couldn't stop. So like they have every right to be confident about what their defense is capable of. So I don't mind that at all. That they should be confident about that. At the end of the day, how they're going to execute on that with the versatility of what we have and what we're able to do, or what we should be able to do with this team, having the amount of time that Sark has had to prepare for this defense, having the amount of time that Quinn has been in this program and has worked with these receivers and have prepared for this. We've seen them time and time again go into games with this amount of time. So I'm just as confident as Texas's fans and Sark himself. Like, the team is confident about the offense, Texas's offense. There's no reason anyone should fight with someone from Michigan over Michigan's defense. They should be proud of it. So that's going to be an exciting matchup to see. Don't mind that at all when they're talking about their defense. I do think, however, if they can't get things going on offense, or if they're struggling to just connect, just logistics, getting the ball to the quarterback, having the quarterback be at peace long enough to actually get the ball out to a receiver, I didn't see enough of that against Fresno State. As much as the playbook I know is being held back, I just didn't see enough of just the basics of just that threatened us. So I do think our defense will put us in position to get more possession to where we'll have those shots on offense, and we'll have to see how it plays out from there. But yeah, nobody should argue at all with anyone from Michigan about their defense. Their defense, they should be proud of it.
Make sure, if you are watching, thank you. Appreciate it a ton. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us. I mean, we're going to have stuff on tomorrow morning. Justin, you and I will be on tomorrow morning. We'll have
I wonder what we're going to talk about.
We will have a bunch of stuff over the course of pregame, postgame, then on Sunday. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening back to this on podcasts, please go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and review. James, I guess one thing we haven't really touched on a whole lot, we talked about the creativity and the scheme, but let's talk a little bit about the players that Michigan has there at running back. Everybody is very aware of Donovan Edwards. Big national championship game, has been in that program for a while, on the cover of of College Football 25. But it seems like he's become the 1B to Kalel Mullins, and just kind of curious what you saw from the Michigan running back room over the course of their game versus Fresno State.
Yeah, I mean, Justin was talking about it before the show, but I heard from Paul when Paul was on the other night talking about Donovan Edwards being in his head, and I could kind of see that because I was shocked at how little touches he got, honestly, in this game. And he only put up about 2.5 yards a carry, which people might be shocked. If you're a casual, you see him on CFB 25, they give him like a 90 overall. You think, oh, this is the guy who bust out those runs and all the big spots, Ohio State a couple years back, Washington game. But I think he's honestly regressing to the mean. Mullings is a fifth-year guy, graduate player. He was the most impressive back, put up 6 yards a carry this weekend. So I think we might see more Mullings than Donovan Edwards again, just because Edwards, if you look back over the past few seasons, more than just the national championship game, he was behind Haskins and Corum, then he was behind just Corum. And there was kind of a reason. He had some injuries at points, but there was kind of a reason he's never been a number one back. So I think Edwards is kind of just not a guy who can be a down in, down out, every single drive type of back. He's an explosive runner. But, if you're a Texas fan who doesn't pay a lot of attention to Michigan, then don't be shocked if you don't see Edwards getting as many carries as you would expect him to just naturally take the torch from Corum. So I'd say keep an eye out for Mullings. A lot of people have not heard of him before, but he's been in the program for a while. I expect him to get a bulk of the carries on Saturday.
He's the type of guy who is part of the whole ground and pound philosophy. I mean, he's listed at 233. So that is a big dude there running between the tackles. Justin, I don't know if we've done predictions quite yet, but I do know that this line moved, I think, from about like 4 to 6.5, maybe even 7.
I think it's 7.5 today.
Yeah, or 3.5 to 7, or it actually opened at 2.5 before this past weekend, then jumped to 7.5 after Michigan's game.
And it's, a lot of times we talk about the idea of like, oh, the public market likes to bet, Texas. And that's obviously true. But I mean, Michigan is one of those teams that a lot of people like to bet as well, especially coming off the national championship game and things like that. So I'm curious, with that line opened as close as it was, and now looking at it, it has ballooned to 7 where I'm looking. What is that? What do you think when you look at Texas being a 7-point favorite, at least as far as if you were making an investment?
It makes me think, a lot of times, don't you generally get 3 points when you're at home? You get maybe a field goal sometimes. Well, yeah. So that makes me think this is possibly a 10-point spread in a sense. Yeah. But Texas is double digits better. The Sharps are trying to tell us that Texas is essentially double digits better than Michigan on the road. And that's a lot to drink in. Like, I can get a field goal, maybe 4 or 5, because I feel like Michigan's going to play so much better this weekend than they did last weekend. I really do think they're going to come out so much stronger. But I don't, we say this all the time in the business. Nobody knows like Vegas, like nobody. Those jokers, that's what they do for a living. They know this kind of stuff. I'm glad I don't pay as much attention to it. I've got 3 guys here that know it much more than I do. And I would listen to what Drew says about this, or James, because these guys are definitely more degenerate than I am when it comes to gambling. They're just smarter. But I got to tell you, if the Sharps are thinking a 7 to 10-point kind of deal, man, that seems a little steep for my good. I don't know if I would invest that much.
So here's the thing. If you look at it and you consider the over-under I'm looking at, which is 42.5, that kind of estimates like a 25 to 18 game. Is that, James, do you see that as, do you see that as being like a likely outcome, or other outcomes being more likely than like a 25-18 game?
What we're talking about with the weather and whatnot earlier, I do think we'll see probably more lateral passing game, trying to establish the run for Texas. And obviously it's going to be a lot harder to run the ball against Graham and Grant up the gut there inside. But then also, I don't expect the over in this game personally, because Michigan, you have no reason to believe they're going to be able to get more than a touchdown or 2 against our defense, especially
they'll take the air out of the ball.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a slower paced game for sure. But I kind of like that score. I think if I were predicting, I would say Michigan somewhere in that 13. I kind of like Texas around 24. Maybe something like first half. I definitely think this will be close. Michigan's O line will be able to get some movement. I think a little bit. They'll probably run all right, and then their D line will keep them in it, obviously, and their guys like Will Johnson will probably make it a little bit difficult to start for passing. But I like Texas similar to the Alabama game last year to just kind of pull away at maybe late third, early fourth, and get probably a 2-touchdown lead.
Drew, what are your thoughts on the lines and the point totals?
I mean, I like Texas just because I don't know where does Michigan get their points over the course of the game. I mean, I think if they do get points, it'll be sustained drives that they have to extend. I just don't see where they're stretching the field. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I don't see it. I haven't seen it. And I mean, in first week games against any opponent, Fresno State, quality opponent, you can say the same about Colorado State or whoever else, we both played. At the end of the day, the teams that showed up and imposed their will in week one against inferior opponents imposed their will. So while there's some assignment things that will be cleaned up, and there are some things just on recognition of blitzes and shifts and things that I know Michigan will come better prepared for this week, I just didn't see enough on film to see that this new unit on offense can produce enough points to make that line make sense. If they show up and do that, great. But I've not seen anything that tells me that they'll be capable of doing that. And I mean, hell, Penn State scored 15 points last year against them on field goals alone. But no, more importantly, I just think we'll have too many possessions and we'll find the points. And their offense hasn't shown me anything that tells me they'll be able to outscore us. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's what I've seen on film.
Yeah, I think and I'm right there with you. It's like Michigan can probably go on some 7-8 play drives. Where do those drives end? That's the key. Does it stall out in the red zone, or do they just go through and through and through and make it, all the way to the goal line? Texas normally under Sarkisian and, basically ever since that 2021 fiasco, they've been able to bow up at the end zone pretty well. This is going to be a big challenge on that. But what that also means is that you can't give up that 60-yard run. Because if you give Michigan away, if you give them explosives instead of making them earn it, that's a recipe for losing this game for Texas. And it's just a run game that can create some explosives, but that's why Johnny Nansen and his influence has been very, very important over the course of this offseason and then even the entire first couple weeks. So Justin, Drew, James, anything else before we get out of here?
I'll say one more thing. Everyone keeps talking about the corners on Michigan's defense. I'd be more concerned about who are their safeties if I'm Michigan, if I'm a Michigan fan. Texas doesn't just go right at corners. We're not running down the seam. That's not what we do. Whoever's in your slots, whoever is in, because it doesn't really even matter who the player is, but the safeties are who are going to get tested more than anything else. And if we're able to just find the time on offense, which I think Sark has done a great job against really good defensive lines to get Quinn time, it's just a different game. So we'll see how it plays out. But kind of as great as their defense is, the area of concern that if I'm Michigan is who are your safeties?
Yeah. I mean, I even forgot about this weekend that my Kentucky Wildcats right there. We stole a safety from them. So and then they lost another safety to Alabama. I just think they lost. They just lost a lot from last year. I think we've gotten kind of conditioned to think with the likes of like Saban and what Kirby Smart's doing that we just think teams are going to every year reload. When in actuality, we see Washington and Michigan, two teams that play for the title. Both of them are probably having a little bit more of a come back down to earth years. I don't want to speak too soon, but that's my gut here. I mean, I watched some highlights again. I watched some of their offensive snaps again, and kind of like what Drew was saying, I just don't personally see, unless there's, a huge jump in Davis Warren, unless, they just go hard with the quarterback run and for whatever reason it cracks. But yeah, I personally like Texas, but it's going to be really fun to watch. I mean, all the game day coverage is going to be awesome. This is crazy, like Texas in the big house. Like, it's like Christmas morning to watch that. Like, I'm so excited to watch two of the most historic programs in football history. So I think everybody should be hyped up whatever happens.
Justin, I think we'll get out of here on this one before I run out of internet. If Texas wins convincingly on a scale 1 to 10, what does that do for the Longhorns' final stretch in recruiting the 2025 class?
I mean, honestly, they're probably going to have a top 5 class no matter what happens Saturday. You got to remember, single games don't really dictate a lot about recruiting rankings. It might help them with 2026. Javion Osborne, the top running back target for Texas, is going to be in Ann Arbor for that game. He loves Texas. He really likes Michigan. I think those two are going to be battling it out with Texas A&M for his services. So we may not see much of effect with 2025, but we could see one with 2026. I think regardless of winning or losing, Texas finishes with a top 5 class at the end of the year. But, hey, get that win, because it'll certainly look good. Those coaches are a little nicer on those phone calls. Coaches are a little more enthusiastic when they call a recruit after the game. They're a little bit more hyped up when they go into the big house and knock off a top 10 team reigning national champion if they can. And so that, to me, is actually where you would see the effect. And don't forget, nickel is not a coverage.
Oh, man, I love doing this. Thank you, Wayne Watson. Thank you all. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're not part of Inside Texas, whether you're living in Detroit or living in Dalhart, one of those places I've been to, and the other one I'll go to this weekend, use the promo code HOOK'em. Gives you 50% off an annual Inside Texas membership. That is the place to be this season, all through next year, and all through recruiting. So, James, Justin, Drew, thank y'all so much. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.